As you can see here, there are some Americans enjoying their time off in the Puson perimeter. But oh wait, is that a North Korean trying to infiltrate their defenses? Oh no, that is not good. Once the North Koreans successfully make it through our defenses, they issue a surprise attack and surprise the American soldiers that are just sitting here leisurely. The American soldiers must act quickly if they want to resolve this issue, and they do, successfully defeating the North Korean attack. The soldiers are absolutely ecstatic by this. Can't you see how happy this soldier is? Isn't he absolutely ecstatic? The American forces have successfully held back the multiple large attacks by the NKA along the Puson perimeter. This fight, known as the Great Naktong Offensive, has been going on since August 27th. However, away from the main battlefield, our generals have been searching for a way to relieve pressure from the Puson perimeter.
General MacArthur, commander of the UN forces in Korea, has conjured up a plan for an amphibious assault on the port city of Inchon. He met some pretty steep criticism, primarily from Admiral Doyle and General Collins. Doyle and Collins believed that a landing in Inchon was simply impossible due to Inchon's natural obstacles and protective seawalls, including the island fort of Walmidu. General MacArthur was able to present these disadvantages as advantages, stating that for the enemy commander, will reason that no one would be so brash as to make such an attempt.
While the invasion force was being assembled, B-29s and other planes of the UN Air Force were softening up the Incheon-Seoul area for the assault. North Korean defense positions were destroyed, and communist supplies and reinforcements from the north cut off.
Due to MacArthur's showmanship, our troops were able to assault Inchon on September 15th. On the morning of September 15th, U.S. ships bombarded the island fort of Walmidu. Multiple destroyers slowly entered the harbor and waited for the enemy guns to fire. Once they did, the ships would fire at the spotted enemies and destroy the guns. The first troops landed at Walmidu at 6:31 a.m. The forces that landed at Walmidu saw little resistance. By the time Walmidu was captured, 120 enemy troops had been killed and 180 had been captured. Only 30 U.S. Marines were injured. After the capture of Walmidu, the mighty artillery guns of the UN forces were positioned on Walmidu and started to bombard mainland Inchon by 4:45 p.m. The shelling continued until 5:30 when the amphibious assault on the blue and red beaches commenced. Troops used specially designed ladders and grappling hooks to scale the tall seawalls. By the night of September 15th, the U.S. Marine forces had secured 3 beachheads and a part of Inchon, and by the end of September 16th, they had captured all of Inchon and started to fan out towards Seoul, and the NKA troops were fighting against the Puson perimeter.
Once Inchon was secured, the dynamic of war was changed for the UN forces. The pressure was taken off the troops in the Puson perimeter and was put on the troops pushing towards Seoul. After the battle supply lines were created through Walmidu, the forces created a dock to unload the remaining landing ships. Then, General Oliver P. Smith sent out an order for the 1st and 5th Marines to move on the Seoul-Inchon road. Once moving on the road, MacArthur's next target was Kimpo Airfield. This airfield was very important because as soon as it was captured, the risk of enemy aerial strikes were greatly reduced and gave pilots a better chance of survival. After the airfield was captured, it was a straight shot to Seoul. Seoul, the capital of the ROK, was vital for any kind of advantage in the war, and MacArthur knew he needed it.
This was the general situation of the 10th Corps on 24 September. The 187th Airborne Regiment and the Korean Marines were destroying the enemy on the Kimpo Peninsula. The 7th Marine Regiment was driving the enemy to the north. The 5th and 1st Marine Regiments fighting in the suburbs of Seoul were encountering fierce enemy resistance, which precluded an early capture of the city. The 7th Infantry Division, having seized the important airfield at Suwon, was deployed on the southern flank. Now the commanding general, 10th Corps, directed the 7th Division commander to commit one of his regiments in an amphibious crossing of the Han River. The regiment's objective was to attack the city amphibiously from the south, capture South Mountain, the commanding terrain in the city, and envelop the enemy's southern flank.
What would unfold next would change the Korean War, and that which would be unfolded is the Battle of Seoul. The American 8th Army, which had been holding the line at Puson perimeter since arriving in August of 1950, were presented with an opening as the Marine forces captured Inchon. The North Korean forces, exhausted from their costly frontal attacks on the Puson perimeter and confronted with an imminent threat to their rear supply lines, quickly drew back from the Nakdong River and retreated north to put pressure on the Marine forces advancing on Seoul. Noticing the North Korean withdrawal, 8th Army Generals Walker, Ridgway, and Van Fleet made the decision to launch an all-out offensive along the entirety of the Puson perimeter, with a focus on connecting with the Marines in Inchon. The offensive began on September 16th, and 9 days later on the 25th, the American Marine and Army forces declared the South Korean capital of Seoul liberated. Contrary to Inchon, this advance into Seoul was slow and gruesome. This advance took nearly 2 weeks to enter the city. During the battle, the North Koreans had a way to escape the city to the south, but General MacArthur made a promise to the ROK leaders that he would take back Seoul for them. The bloody and fierce battling that preceded the capturing of the city led to heavy civilian casualties. Overall, the campaign to capture Seoul through Inchon and Puson helped give the UN an edge in the Korean War. It allowed them to gain the momentum to push past the 38th parallel and take the fight to the North Koreans. Even though Admiral Doyle and General Collins had their doubts about the landing and its abilities to succeed, MacArthur was able to accomplish quite a feat for the free world against communism.